Hola, welcome to UA Tutor. We're going to learn the difference between imperfect tense and preterite tense. They're both past tenses, but they are used in different situations. So this is a big question for intermediate learners, but I try to narrow everything down in these 3 points. And I have a main point that is the main difference between them that I think works 85% of the time, more or less. If you ask yourself, am I describing how things were, or am I describing what happened or what people did? If you're talking about how things were, it's going to be imperfect, and if you talk about what happened, it's going to be preterite. But let's go more into detail. The first thing is habits or routine. So I need imperfect to talk about habits in the past because they're past tenses. And so I can use used to. If I can use used to do something, it's going to be imperfect. For example, I used to walk to school when I was little. So I'm talking about a phase in my life when I was little, which will be imperfect. I used to walk to school, that also will be imperfect because it's a habit in the past. Another one will be when I lived in Spain, I used to have dinner at 9. So again, I had dinner at 9 and that was a habit or a routine. It was a repeated action and it happened during some time, a phase in my life in the past. Another moment where we will use imperfect is describing this scene. So, for example, if you're talking about holidays, you would say what you did every day. For that, you will use preterite because that's what happened, what people did, what you did in this case. But you would use imperfect to describe how things were. So, how was the place, describing the food, etc. An example of this is the hotel. So the hotel was big and near the beach. You would use imperfect for that. Another example is my mom was angry. It was raining and I didn't know what to do. This is more, you're more likely to find an example like this one in a book. But it's describing the scene. So you're describing maybe something happened that day and you're saying that day your mom was angry and that it was raining and you felt this way. That is the scene, let's say. So if you were talking about a play, for example, you think about a play has a stage and then the actors come in and they perform. You would be describing the stage or describing the mood of the actors with imperfect. And then for the actual plot and what happens and what the actors do, you will use preterite. I'm gonna leave this one for last because it's kind of in between. And let's go with the preterite. So the first case is punctual actions. So they're not repeated, they're not part of any habit or routine, they're punctual. One example of this is we went to the restaurant and I ate pasta. Going to the restaurant and eating pasta is not part of any routine, you just did it that day. Another one is I opened the windows and I felt instantly cold. Again, is something that happens quite quickly, it ends quite quickly, it's not repeated, it's not part of any routine or habit. And then, obviously, as the main difference says, what people did or what happened. So, an example for this, she started singing and when she finished, everybody gave her an applause. So again, she singing and everybody giving her an applause is not a repeated action, it's a punctual thing that happened one day. Or even if it happened 3 times during a very short period and you specified that it was for a week, you still would use preterite because it's not still a habit, something that just happened for a very short period of time. And the last case is if I have 2 actions, they don't happen at the same time, but they do cross at some point. I would use the imperfect to talk about the one that lasted longer and preterite for the one that lasted shorter. I was reading imperfect when the phone rang, preterite. Every time you say I was doing something or someone was doing something, you're gonna use imperfect. Now, reading, the action of reading, lasted for longer than the phone ringing. Maybe I was reading for half an hour and the phone rang in the middle for, I don't know, a minute. I'm using two actions in the same sentence. They don't happen at the same time. So using a different tense creates a contrast, so it's clearer, really. Imagine a story. You would use the preterite to talk about what happened and what you did, and imperfect to describe how things were in the background, and also to talk about habits and things that happened quite regularly. I'm going to put here on the screen somewhere some sentences in English, and you can practice by choosing imperfect or preterite. So you think, which tense would I use to translate these sentences into Spanish? And you can also translate them if you want extra practice. You have videos for imperfect and preterite in my channel as well if you want to recap that, and you have grids to use them in the practice as well. So if you do that, please leave it below in the comments if you want my correction, or you want to ask me any question, and I'll be here again every week with another grammar point in Spanish. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and give me a thumbs up if you found this helpful. Hope you did. Hasta luego. Ciao.